Hello, guys, welcome to this podcast, Everyday Talkies, which ironically does not come out daily. I am Anshul and I talk about random things to random people, majorly about life, perspectives, and thinking process. It's like an interview, or let's say more of a conversation with one or two guests about random topics that interest us. To be really honest, it's just a way to reduce my inhibitions in talking to people. So come join me and enjoy. Hello, guys, welcome to the new episode of Everyday Talkies. So, we are continuing our tradition of getting to know more about finance, getting to meet other people who are working in this industry to educate ourselves and grow our financial literacy. I won't blabber too much, but today I have my cousin who's here as a guest. I think the first lady guest in my podcast. I do not know why it took so much time. Probably I do not have much friends in that way. But thanks to Smriti for joining us for this episode. And I'll shut up and give her the platform to introduce herself and talk about her journey in finance.
Hi Anshul. So I'm Smriti and I am currently pursuing my MBA from NMIMS Mumbai. And I am an engineer myself and I've worked for 3 years with Bosch, post which I actually decided that I want to do an MBA and that too in finance. As rightly pointed out by Anshul, I don't think it's that you don't have too many friends. It's that we have really few women in this field, maybe. Because when I came to college, if you see in engineering college, obviously the ratio of girls was less. But in an MBA college, you would at least expect that to be more because people from BCom, BSc, economics, everyone comes here, right? So then you'll expect the ratio to be a good number. But in a class of 60 students, I think we have 15 girls. That's it. And that includes marketing, finance, and operation. So if I consider only finance, it's an abysmal number.
That's actually sad to hear.
So in the same thing, if I see a CFO, if you see any company's CFO, do you ever hear a woman in that position?
Yeah, that is true. And that has been a point of discussion in many organizations as well.
Now they are actually trying to increase it.
I was just trying to ask that there's this trend and everybody, frowns upon, I would say, or people call it a very mainstream thing and people do their engineering and just go for their MBA. I would like to personally know more about what made you pursue engineering and what made you actually, pursue the field of finance and totally, changing your lines there.
So if someone would have asked me in a job interview, the answer would have been definitely different because, we modify our answers to the interviewer. But here, because I can be all like myself, I would be true. Being from a Marwari household and always seen my parents in the business and my cousins, everyone is in business. Even you are aware, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think I have anyone in my family who is an engineer. So when I was in 10th or 11th, that's what excited me. I wanted to pursue the field of engineering because that was something no one had done. And being a girl from my family also, I don't think there was anyone a girl who went outside of my hometown and studied. So I was the first one and my dad allowed me. So that's what excited me to pursue engineering. It was a very good course. I liked it. Then I worked for it. But inside me, there was this small part which always wanted to do something in business. So my dad always wanted me to become a CA. I remember him saying that in 10th, he take up commerce, become a CA. Why do you want to do engineering? Maybe because of that I had this thing in my mind. So now I felt that a CA degree just gives you the knowledge. It definitely gives you knowledge. There's no doubt about it. But then I wanted exposure to the real world. So I thought an MBA in finance degree would be better option for me that way. So I'm a person who likes speaking, who likes to interact, and a CA is a course that you have to sit by yourself, you have to study for long hours. There's no presentations as such. I wanted to improve on those skills as well. So MBA gives you a wonderful platform for that.
Since you're already there and you're already learning about these things and already in the process, so how would you say the experience is? Or because there are lakhs of people, myself included, who are preparing for these master courses, MBA courses, and we're all just behind the preparation of it. That is giving our CAT exams or whatever exams, competitive exams to get into the colleges. But I think the one thing which really lacked between, I think, all the participants, I would say, though I don't want to generalize, is that what actually happens in a college? What do you actually learn? What insights are you gaining which will help you in the real world? Talk to us something about that.
That's very true. When we are preparing, we do not think of the final outcome, that once we get it, what will happen in the college. But there are a few of them who actually think about it. Because when I joined the class, I'll tell you about that time, I was intimidated because there were so many people from BCom background. There are people actually in my class who are CAs. So they have completed their chartered accountancy and then they have come to get an MBA degree. There are CFA graduates. They're amazing and their knowledge is vast. So to meet that knowledge and to get an understanding of that, I feel we should also keep preparing. We should be aware of what is actually going on in the economy. That is one thing. Everyone says read the newspaper, but no one actually tells us which newspaper should we read and what should we read in a newspaper, because a newspaper is huge. I cannot take an Economic Times and this 12 pages. Reading through will take me at least 3-4 hours if I read it religiously. But there are certain things that we should know. So first of all, ET and Live Mint. There is this business news called Live Mint. One should religiously follow these, I feel. And in ET, we can read about the general market trends, what is happening in the economy, if there is some mergers and acquisition that's happening. That is in general for an MBA graduate. It's not about only being in finance. Everyone should be aware of it. Other than this, there are many courses which actually instills basic things in us. We can pursue those. I wish someone had actually told me when I was joining my MBA college, because there is some time, just like suppose this lockdown, we had so much time, 2-3 months. People who are actually preparing for MBA this year could have utilized it to their best if they knew what they have to prepare for. So knowing Excel religiously, I know Excel is a tool we think is everyone uses Excel, but it has so many things. And then just being aware with the economy is one thing I think which really helped me, because earlier when I joined the college, reading newspaper was not my thing, to be very true. But then I started reading and then I got to know that it's really interesting and you have topics to talk to people about. Otherwise, in a GD suppose, or in a normal conversation in class, when people are talking, you'll be intimidated. Rather, if you know things, that will give you confidence. And while preparing, you should be sure, maybe not adamant about what course do you want, if you see yourself as a credit analyst or something, but you should have something in your mind that what do you want from the course.
That is, I think, a very big learning, I would say, because people know they want to do an MBA, but what needs to be done after that, that's a very big question.
True. And that might change, because suppose today if I want to pursue something, but because the economic conditions have changed, I cannot 100% guarantee that I'll get that role. But if I work towards it, maybe in a few years, I might get it.
Okay, so also we know what is there in finance. So finance is about money, and you talked about CA here. But educate us about the different roles in finance, because I'm sure that finance is just not limited to just CAs. So what do these finance people actually do?
So that is very rightly said, that it is not only about CAs. That's what we have been learning since our childhood, I think, that finance is mostly for CAs. If I talk in an analogy for this, it's as simple as when you were a child, you got 10 rupees and you decided if you wanted a bar of chocolate or maybe you wanted a chips packet and a chocolate. So deciding there, that's in a way, if I'm talking about analogy here, isn't it portfolio management? So instead of putting all your 10 rupees in one place, you're actually placing it in two things. So that's finance for me. You know, if you relate it to the real world, it becomes very easy. And like you said, talking about different roles. So suppose today a company wants to buy another company. So then you should know which company is good for you to invest. Suppose now, like just we were saying, even if it is not about buying, it's just about getting stake in company. You saw the recent RIL, every other company getting a stake in it. There is a finance team within these companies. Suppose KKR, Facebook, everyone has a finance team that has actually checked the balance sheet of the company. The company's strategy is very important. Also, one thing, we always think finance is only about numbers, but it is also about strategy. what is the strategy that the company is applying. So I was reading this very interesting thing. Reliance, I don't remember the exact amount how much they raised, but that's an amount which the government of India could not raise even in 2 years, and Reliance raised it in 20 days. It is because of the strategy that was applied by Reliance Industries, because people know that it will grow leaps and bounds. So that is one thing. Other than that, there are many roles. If I talk like that, there is credit analysis. Just like we saw that recently India's rating was downgraded. That is what a ratings role does. So they check the ratings. Even each company is given a rating. That's how we get to know that this company has defaulted or that company has defaulted. To be very true, I do not know about each of these parameters because these are specific to certain roles. But broadly, these are a few things. Other than this, so we had our 2 months internship in the month of May and June. I was working for a South African bank. So it involved some Forex trading. And so suppose it's a bank, it has already set up in South Africa and they are new in India. I think they came in 2014. So how can they leverage the Indian condition to work with South Africa, and how they actually use their money to finance? So the currency there is rand, right? So how Indian currency and that currency go together and how they use it to finance all their deals. These were certain things. I cannot talk about everything because, the NDA. So this is also a very, very interesting field. I wasn't aware of this until my internship. So it's about global markets, and given the current situation, it was a very interesting field to work for.
Okay, so let me understand this properly. So basically, what you were doing was you were working for that South African bank to understand their viability in India. How can they adapt to the Indian market? What are the policies that they can introduce, or what are the features as a bank they can introduce so that they can capitalize on the Indian market? So is that something true which I'm understanding?
Also, actually, I was looking from the other side because they have a franchisee in India. From India, if you see, I had listed down, there are too many Indian companies in South Africa, and we employ many South African people there. So, as an Indian bank, how can they also invest in these companies, and who might require their assistance?
Okay. This seems quite interesting because it's very different from the usual numbers that we always listing. This seems to be more of a problem solving activity here where you are strategizing whether this will be the right fit. It seems really quite interesting to me that this falls under finance and this could be done under finance.
So earlier when I was given the project, even I was skeptical. How is this finance? But then when I started working, I realized it actually comes under finance. It is not that there was no numbers game at all. There were number games. But it accounted for, I think, 20 or 30% maybe. But it was mostly about strategizing, as you rightly mentioned.
If I could ask you, let's say that obviously you have amassed now so much different kind of knowledge in finance. What is that one thing which interests you personally in this field and something which you would like to pursue even further?
I do not know. Maybe I need to explore the field a little more because my first year was general. It's not only finance. So right now in the second year, I'm starting more of finance subjects, but the subjects are amazing. So I just started with a subject called futures and options a few days back.
So if you have mentioned those terms, then why don't you explain us in very layman words so that even dumb people like me can understand it very easily?
The general trading. So normally whatever we invest in stock market or we trade, that is that today's price. So suppose an ITC, if I may take the example.
Yeah.
All these are fictional numbers. I do not know the original price. Suppose it is trading at 300 rupees today and you are normally investing in it, then you will buy it for 300 rupees if someone else is ready to sell. That is you getting it in T+2 days. It gets assigned to you, right? But so in the future, what happens? You decide that after 10 days you want this stock ITC.
But why would I want it after 10 days? Like, is there a reason behind that?
Yeah, so if you think that suppose they're coming up with a new product and you think it will hit the market and it will be amazing and you think the price will increase that time, but now you're getting it only for 300 rupees. But if it actually hits the market, you'll get it for 330 rupees. Then you'll be at a profit of 30 rupees there.
Correct.
If you decide the price today. So today, if you get it for 300 rupees, after 10 days, the person, whoever you're trading, has to sell it to you for 300 rupees, even though the price is 330 rupees.
Oh, okay.
But the thing here is, what if the product isn't a hit? What if the product flops and the price falls to 250 rupees? You are obligated to buy it. You cannot help. Then there is this thing called options. So here what happens in the same example, when it is 330 rupees, you can say that okay, I will exercise my option and I will buy ITC ka share. But if the price is 250, if it falls, then you don't buy it. But the catch here is that when you're buying it for 300, maybe you'll have to pay a premium of 10 rupees. So that premium, suppose after 10 days the price is less and you say you don't want to buy. So the seller will also get at least 10 rupees out of that transaction.
Okay, I understand. So basically, he will get the transaction fee.
Correct. It's a kind of transaction.
So then wouldn't options be more favorable than futures?
Yes, so for a buyer it is more favorable, but for a seller it gets a little tricky, because what if the price falls too much and premium of a very less amount will not be, very good to cover it. And this is only the basics, because I've just read 1 or 2 classes, so even I'm not aware of it in depth. So the professor who's teaching us, he actually trades, so he takes our classes only after 3:30 according to him, and for him he trades only options. So he says it's very interesting, and that is one thing which keeps you on your feet. You keep reading what is happening, what.
Yeah, so please tell us more about the other subjects that you're reading and explain us in brief what are they.
So this other subject is called investment analysis and portfolio management. That's basically, we always say don't keep all your eggs in one basket. Divide your investment. If you're investing in one oil company, invest the other one in something else maybe. Our sir gave us a very nice analogy. He told that investing and managing a portfolio is like a chemical reaction. So if you combine 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen, you get H2O, which is a completely different product. So similarly, what happens in portfolio is, suppose if you are getting 10% return from one company and the other company is performing in maybe negative, if it's giving you a negative of 5%, you are still getting a 5% positive return.
When I first heard of this concept, I had this very absurd theory. I thought that if you could just buy, let's say, a 10 rupee worth of share in every company that is listed in stock market. Now, because Indian economy as a whole is growing, as a net result, I'll eventually earn a net profit of around 10 or 12%.
Never thought of that. Very interesting.
Does that even make sense? Even as a theoretical exercise, as a hypothetical exercise, I'm pretty sure it will be very difficult to invest in all the companies listed in stock market.
We can actually try that. So I'm thinking I'll start a virtual trading.
It will be good for you to experiment and then tell us the results. Okay, so let's know about the other things that you're reading.
So these were mostly finance subjects I'm studying. Other than this, I've taken strategy subjects as that interests me. So my strategy subject is called business model and planning. So that is learning how a business grows and what takes for a business, for a startup basically, to turn to a unicorn startup, because we have seen that not all startups sustain. And how do you get that idea that clicks, and how do you know if your business idea is good or bad? So this is a subject we have just started, but it's beautiful.
One thing I would like to add, that might be that my thinking is wrong here, but from what I have read, I see that there are numerous startups which just pitch their ideas and they get lots of funding. I'm sure they must have done their hard work behind it. They must have shown that they're capable of building that, and they get funded. And eventually, if that does not work out, it's just a loss of money. And we have examples like Uber, Ola, and even the food industry, the food delivery industry, where they're just operating on losses. A basic understanding,
True.
from a very rudimentary sense, which I know, is you cannot sustain loss. I understand that these companies want to build a habit out of the general public, like Ola and Uber are successful in doing that. I'm not sure whether they're still earning profit or not, but how can a company of this scale, where an investor is just investing more and more money just to recoup what they had initially invested, and there is no end in sight, you're just pouring more and more money in, and you never know when the profit is going to come in.
Very interesting. So to be very true, I'm not much aware of this. Even I don't understand how this works, but they always say that a startup is always in loss. So I do not understand this concept, but it takes a few years for them to generate profit.
Yeah, I understand. Like if it takes a few years, when you know there's a considerable growth, but when you see these giants right now, the local travel industry, even the food industry, which have now sustained for over a decade, I would say. There is no end in sight. They're still getting losses in crores. So it just seems baffling at sometimes that how can they just get more and more funding?
I'll also read about it. It's very interesting thing that you pointed out.
You never know these days what happens. As we saw in few episodes before, in the story of money, where government keeps on printing money and things just keeps flowing on it. It's a case of similar nature.
Correct. Oh, related to that, I was recently reading this thing which interested me a lot. So, India as a country, we have a lot of debt, and because we do not have anything to fund it, the government might plan to buy gold from the users, like the common man, from you or from me, our household gold, because you cannot directly go and print money. You need either forex reserves for it or you need some gold reserves. So getting forex reserves will be costly because we already are in a lot of debt. So getting gold from the country people, and right now the gold prices are really high. So suppose if you sell 10 gram gold to the government, they'll give you 50,000 rupees. So there were many articles on this recently. If this works and if people are ready, but the concern here is, will people give their gold? Because normally our mothers, they attach it to sentiments. The value is not only money, it's sentiments. Only then they can print money to actually counter fiscal deficit.
But one thing I would say that I would trust investing in gold more than trusting the government. Obviously, India has a sentimental value related to gold as well. But eventually, in the entire world, because gold is limited in quantity, there is a proper demand and supply, you could say. Whereas in a printing currency, where government or banks have the ability to print as much currency as they can, given what happened with the US financial crisis, what has happened with the financial crisis of Venezuela and other countries, it just seems logical that you invest in gold or precious metals rather than your currency.
That is very true, very rightly said. Gold, as you rightly mentioned, first of all, it's an asset class which is common throughout the world. So it is not like one USD is basically equivalent to some 70 INR. If gold is a price in the US, it's here as well.
You could say like it's more globalized. It is same for everyone. Yeah, that's actually an interesting way to look at it. Too much talk about, again, financial crises and all that. Let's not go into that again. But okay, tell us something more about the other things that you're reading.
I'll tell you one fact I read recently. So there's this thing in casinos. So normally we listen that in casinos they play music so that you spend a lot of money, you are in good mood. If you see it that way, that is also finance, right? To make money, they are playing such soothful music which makes you happy and makes you spend more money.
Even I read about there are certain marketing areas where they play with human psyche to engross them more to the product and ultimately help in the finances. Let's say the food industry thrives with the color red because that appeals to the hunger in people. Finance not only includes just the calculation part of it, but also the unorthodox ways on how you can improve human experience and thus gain more money.
True, very true. And at the end of the day, an MBA school will teach you one thing, that it is all about your consumer. It is all about the customer and their preferences and what they want. So if I am an investment bank and you are my customer and you tell me that you want to buy company A, so I will make sure that I give you such numbers that will help you buy company A. So I will fudge the number accordingly. That's how it actually works in the industry. Yeah, that's incorrect, but I have recently gained this insight. If you know Ashwath Damodaran sir, he is an NYU Stern professor and he is like the finance god. So he told once in his lecture that he doesn't like investment bankers as such. He always says that getting a number is very easy, but at the end of the day, it is all about story. The story you build. Why should I buy that company? That is more important than just getting a number and saying that, yeah, this company will earn me 10 crore of profit, I should buy it. For your reference, I'll send you the video.
I'll actually include that in the description so that anybody who's interested to know more about this, on how investment bankers might not be the people you thought they might be. There might be obviously good people and bad people, but again, it's good to be aware. But chalo, like the idea behind this recording was just that we would keep it very chill. We would discuss about the daily life of our guests so that we know about what is actually there in an MBA college, what is there in finance, and finance is not something which you should be afraid about, because I am consciously making a personal effort to do these small casual episodes on finance in a very lucid manner so that even kids can understand and start to think about it, because I think as a country as a whole, we lack a lot in financial literacy and people don't really talk openly about money, and bringing this topic out in the open, and people listening in their daily lives would actually give them something to think about, something to read about, and something to ask the parents and their family on how they manage their finances. So again, thanks so much, Smriti, for being a guest. And why don't you conclude this? Tell us some parting thoughts.
So it was a pleasure talking to you. I was really afraid in the beginning, as I told you. Thank you so much for that opportunity. And one thing you rightly mentioned, we do not, as a country on a whole, we do not talk about our finances. We do not think of our personal finances. Where should we invest? Where should we not invest? We really need to think about it. Maybe you can do a podcast with someone who knows about personal finances. It will be great if you can get someone to speak on that.
Yeah, surely. Like, actually, what I'll do is I'll open it to all the listeners. If somebody who's interested and knows something about personal finances and managing personal finances, I would be glad if you could be a guest in the future episodes so that the other listeners can get some knowledge about it. And I'll also try to plug in my own forum and website, which I've launched recently, where we have set up a forum where all our guests, all our listeners can ask questions, get answers to the questions. Like in this episode, we had some open questions, right, regarding how startups get their funding even when they're operating in losses. How, if you are investing in, let's say, all the stocks, hypothetical scenario, will it eventually turn into a profit? So these are open questions we currently don't know answers to, and that is why we have guests and people who are experts in these fields. So our forum is a place where you can post these questions, get answers to these questions, and learn more about it. But again, it's my pleasure to host you, Smriti, for this, and thank you so much for agreeing to this. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Anshul. It's been a pleasure as well. I'll leave you with one thought. Think about, if you have to value the moon, how much is the moon worth? How will you value it? Think about it and let me know whenever possible.
Okay, I'll get back to you on that one. But until then, bye bye, everybody, and thank you for listening.
Bye bye.
Thank you to all the listeners. I'll catch up with you again soon with someone new and lots of interesting discussions. So, bye.